you will notice if you are viewing me live on Facebook, that the background is a little different. I'm in a different setting, I'm not at my little studio because I got kind of, Snowden's not the word, but it just was not a good idea for me to try. It turns out W Beatles, as efficient as they are on mileage, not so good in the snow. But I love my little car. So I decided to be on the safe side and to go in and go remotely today. So I'm excited. And hi, everybody in the chat room: Ron Edwards, Deontay Johnson, Emery, Cook, Damian, Susan Enderly, JW. How are you, Josh, Michael? So happy to see you guys. Long time no see, Ron Edwards. So I wanted to make you guys aware of that if you're wondering like where in the heck I am. A little bit more housekeeping. I am going to have Corey Poirier on a show on Monday. Very excited to have him. He actually is also a returning guest. He's like a 6-time TED Talk motivational speaker, and he is just fantastic. And we're actually going to record an appearance of mine on his show. So I wanted to let you know about that. And in addition, if any of you all caught my little public school rant after my show last Friday, I write for Politichicks, and I need to send another article in, and so I sent that video to the editors, and I said, hey, would you like me to write about this? What do you think? And they said, actually, we will post the transcript and the video there. So I'll probably be looking for a job. Listen, it happened. God's going to do what he's going to do about that, but it needed to be said. So we'll see what happens. Sean, JC, speaking of school, one of my old neighbors at my old school. Good to see you, Sean. Jim, Russ, hi, Tina, David, hello, and welcome. So Politichicks is going to do a transcript and then post the link to the video if you want to check it out. That's at politichicks.com. I'm just so happy and privileged to be associated with them. Okay, last thing. If you want to follow me on Twitter, or it is at Money Talk Mel to follow the show page. If you want to follow my political commentary, you can do so at NJGOP Diva on Twitter. So, okay, I think that's it for that kind of stuff, that housekeeping stuff. There's some other like really exciting things going on, but it's too soon for me to talk about it. But I'll keep you posted. But like super exciting stuff. Just saying. Hopefully that keeps you listening. All right, so let's talk about what's going on in the news a little bit. Apparently, we're like really close to getting a tax reform bill. Like super duper close. Yeah, Deontay, that's a good question. Who is calling me? I thought it was you. You know I was going to come to DC and get you. Deontay Johnson. He was saying somebody was calling me during my broadcast here, which is like crazy because like I'm live on Facebook. So why would you? Anyway, just another story. For those of you at SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio Land, I also stream live on Facebook. So, and occasionally a person will call. Usually it's Deontay Johnson of the Black Conservative Federation, but it wasn't him this time. Anyway, it looks like we're close to a tax reform bill. My boy Marco Rubio, I'm a big fan. Who I'm a big fan of, was holding out to get more on the child tax credit. I don't know anything about that. I don't have kids, so it didn't really concern me. But he wanted more money for that, and he got like $300 more, I believe. Also, still in, they were going to remove the student loan interest deduction that is back in. Repatriation still in. I find it kind of curious, and repatriation is, when companies make money overseas, a lot of times they'll just leave it overseas because they don't want to suffer the like 35% tax rate that we have. And so they'll leave the money overseas, and repatriation brings that money back at a low tax rate. But that's all I ever hear when they refer to that, and even looking into it, is that they're going to bring it back at a low tax rate. But we're not hearing like the deeds behind that, like what is the very low tax rate. But the corporate tax rate in and of itself is going from going to go from 35% down to 21%, which is stellar. I mean, I don't know who negotiated that, but I know Donald Trump went at 20 and he got 21. That's pretty fantastic. And it should be a huge infusion to the economy once it goes through. And yes, Jim Clemens, repatriation is a huge part of it. That is a lot of money coming back to the United States for companies to invest. And here's the thing, the leftists of the world will tell you that, they're just going to use that money to increase their dividends and this kind of thing. And sure, there's going to be some of that among corporations, but they would be idiotic and stupid, and it would just be a bad move business-wise to not expand, which means more jobs, which means higher wages because of increased competition. Do you get what I'm saying? Just saying. So people who think they're still going to be broke just need to relax and take a deep breath and let President Trump do what he does. And the holdouts right now are Corker and Flake, which I don't think anyone's surprised about. They say it's because of the deficit, but we know good and darn well that it's probably a political vendetta. So we'll see what it actually is that they want, or whether they really want to go down in history as the senators who totally screwed up the tax reform bill, historic tax reform bill. We'll see, because I have a feeling if they didn't have beef with President Trump, that they'd be yeses, and we'd be over it. I'm just saying. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the way President Trump handles beef. I get it, but I'm just saying. And I don't know that these senators would be acting any differently, regardless. Who knows? But today's the last day, in case you were planning on signing up for Obamacare, today's the last day to sign up for socialized medicine. I'm sorry. Did I say that? Yeah, I'm not really sorry. But today's the last day to sign up for Obamacare if you were planning to. So that's something for you to know. And also another sign of our good economy and the effect that President Trump is having on it is that Americans are spending more this holiday season than ever. They're even spending at the malls and the high-end stores. It jumped 8%, 0.8%, I should say, in November from the month prior. And sales have increased 5.8% annually. So that's pretty huge. Even your Macy's and Nordstrom's of the world are doing well. Holy smokes, Mr. Lonnie Poindexter is here. Well, hello. Tom O'Halloran, Eric, Jim, thank you so much for joining me. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I am your one and only business diva, Melanie Collette, and we will be back in a few short moments with my guest, Perry Marshall.
President Trump has directed the United States to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, despite what the Dragon media and others may proclaim. Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, the city of Jerusalem was first designated Israel's capital over 3,000 years ago by King David, as described in 2 Samuel in the Bible. Following King David, his son Solomon built the Holy Temple and installed the Ark of the Covenant there. Ever since the days of King David, the Jews have faced Jerusalem in their daily prayers. It is the center of Jewish faith and the core of Jewish history, which predates by over a millennium the Islamic persuasion. Jerusalem is where the Knesset governing body is housed, and it doesn't make sense for the United States to maintain embassy. Nations around the world who have denounced President Trump's decision to move the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, it will ultimately bode well for both the United States and Israel. After all, Israel is a sovereign nation with the right to choose its capital, and likewise, the U.S. is a sovereign nation with the right to choose where to place our U.S. embassies. God bless both Israel and the United States of America. I'm Ron Edwards.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
Who likes paying taxes? Nobody. That's why Eva Rosenberg from TaxMama.com wants you to pay less of them. Read Small Business Taxes Made Easy and learn how legally hiring your spouse and children can slash your taxes. Learn how to set up a business plan that minimizes taxes, the benefits of setting up an exit plan, how to avoid getting audited, and how to legally increase your deductible expenses with better record-keeping techniques. Don't let the IRS squeeze you out of every penny. Visit TaxMama.com. Click on Ask a Tax Question to get free answers to your tax and business questions. That's TaxMama.com.
My name is David Barnett, and I've been helping people buy and sell small and medium-sized businesses since 2008. So far this year, I've gone on 5 vacations. It's because I've got my own business. When you get tired of being managed by someone else and you decide business ownership is right for you, without the risk of starting your own unproven enterprise, then come over to businessbuyeradvantage.com. There are over 100 YouTube videos on buying and selling businesses that you can watch for free. That's businessbuyeradvantage.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette, and our guest today is Perry Marshall, who is not only the founder of $5 Million Evolution, he's also an author, speaker, engineer, and world-renowned business consultant in Chicago. He has done a decade of research, incredible research, really, with a fresh perspective to a 150-year-old evolution debate. If you want to get the details behind that debate, it's in the archives the last time I had him on the show. Unfortunately, I did not air that show live. I got to remember what was going on, but our schedules didn't allow it or something. And it was just really one of the most interesting conversations I've had, so you definitely want to catch that. But today, we're going to talk about the business of gene editing and making designer babies. This is a thing now. So without further ado, Mr. Perry Marshall, how are you?
Hey, it's great to be on your show, Melanie. Thanks for having me on.
I am so happy to have you on.
I'm delighted that we're doing this.
So am I. I will tell you, we recorded your show last time. We didn't air it live, and I think I mentioned to you, I said, I'm going to so regret not Facebook Living this, and I got a lot of great feedback from that show. Yeah,
well, let's dig into this because I think the switchboards are going to light up on this one.
Indeed. So tell us first of all what in the world gene editing is. What is that?
Okay, so everybody has cells, and cells are built by plans that are in DNA, and the DNA. It's not the complete instructions, by the way. It's part of the instructions, but what color your eyes and all kinds of things like that, those are controlled by your genes, and you can now edit genes find and replace in Microsoft Word. And it's difficult than that, but at least in principle it can be done very easily. And in fact, there's one company that's selling a $138 kit where, it's like, use this kit and edit DNA. And so biologists are doing this in the lab, and they're doing it on bacteria, and they're doing it on cells as well. It's possible to do this on humans too. And, so this is like a whole new world with a whole bunch of complexities, and companies are already investing hundreds of millions in this. Now, the technology itself, it's called CRISPR, which is this acronym that I don't need to go into, but there's literally hundreds of millions of dollars of investment money going into the industry of editing genes, and there's promises of hopefully medical breakthroughs and improving the human race and everything. And it's a very messy subject, and it's very controversial, and it is humans playing God.
It is, as you know, I have no problem with us getting into the God aspect of this, and that is definitely something that I want to talk about, because, yeah, like you said, you're playing God. Like he designed this thing to work out a certain way here.
Well, so there's a lot of things that come into play here, and I think the first thing that you have to say about this is that it's a lot more complex than we imagine in our minds. Okay, so we've all read magazine articles and stories on the web and different things about genes, and most of us took some kind of biology, and we have this idea that there's a gene for our blue eyes, and there's a gene for our hair-free chest, and there's a gene for our baldness, and all of that. Like, well, that's kind of like saying there must be a letter for all the cars driving around in a mystery novel. It's like, well, yeah, so if I give you a Stephen King novel and it's Christine, there's an old, horror novel, right?
Right.
It's like Christine is a car, and you go, well, word for car. Well, there is a word for car, but it's not like every time you see the word car that it's referring to the same thing. It might be referring to this car or that car or whatever. So language is very complex, and you could have you'd say it, and it could be talking about the car, but you don't say the word car. Well, genetics is kind of like that, okay? This is actually much more complicated than people imagine it to be, okay? And it's even more complicated than biologists imagine it to be. And so I'm really concerned here that what we're going to have is that this is like a 14-year-old taking his dad's toolbox and fixing the family Ferrari.
That's a fantastic analogy. That's a really good, because we're kids when it comes to this creation thing. Infants.
We are infants. Now, let's back up a step and let's talk about what you probably can do. What's going to be difficult, okay? And so, first of all, let's just understand that the genie is already out of the bottle on this thing.
Yes.
Like, the toothpaste is out of the tube. It's not going back. Now, they're having ethics discussions, and, they're looking at different laws and things like this, but, it's already out there.
If they're looking at it, well, I read an article about it in Fortune when I was researching it for the show, and, they said that it was, I found this very curious, and I don't know if it was a mistake on the editor's part or what, but they said something like, well, it's only 20 to 30 years away. And then in the next paragraph, they were like, it costs $1,000 to gene edit. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I thought it was 20 years away. How do you know how much it costs? And it's going to go down to $100. So that's not even expensive for the thought of what you're doing. That's not even expensive.
Well, so it's now with humans it's a more expensive. With nobody's gonna for $1,000.
Right.
Okay. What they can do, they can sequence your entire genome for $1,000 and tell you what's all in there. They can do that for $1,000. If they're going to edit it, that's a whole other thing. But here's an idea. Let me give you a notion of what can probably be done. Fibrosis, a pretty awful condition. It's caused by one letter copying error in a particular place in your entire genome. So this is like, your genome is like 46 encyclopedias full of information. Okay, it's a lot of information. It's the same amount of information that'll fit on a CD-ROM. Okay, and cystic fibrosis is caused by one of those 3 billion letters being copied incorrectly. Okay,
Wow.
so it only takes that one error. Now, gene editing could probably fix that very neatly. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that, but probably I'm about right on that. Okay? But when you start getting into more complicated things, like, well, I want my kid to have a higher IQ or a lot of other diseases, or, well, I want lower propensity for a heart attack or anything like that, that's a million times more complicated than fixing cystic fibrosis. And a lot of things that can go wrong.
Like
so
what?
If anybody knows a software developer, just ask any software developer. Does anybody in your lab write perfect code the first time?
You are so right. And listen, a perfect example of that is, and I used to teach computer programming, and I would tell my students this. When you get your periodic updates, nobody ever looks at what it says. But look at what it says in the updates. 9 times out of 10, the first thing on the update is bug fixes. What's a bug?
Yes.
It's a mistake. And that's
Yes.
almost always the first thing you'll see on your updates. And what that means is, like the example you just said, is that whoever wrote the code for that particular app or apps, depending on how many updates you have, made a mistake. And now they're updating it. I don't think it can do that with people. And if you do, what they would have to do, I would imagine, is not too nice.
Well, so the nice thing about software is you can test it. You can't test people.
Right.
Right? You make one, and that's it. Here they are. Right? I can test a piece of software. If I don't like it, I can delete it. There's no ethical issues whatsoever. Right? But so if we edit your genes and here we go. Now sometimes there are experiments now where they're editing, they're injecting a virus into a person. The virus is going around and editing the genes because it's been programmed to do so, and then it's only going to fix some chronic condition. Now that's totally edge at this point.
Right.
Now, and if it goes wrong, there's no trying a second time. All right, like you got one shot at getting this thing right. Now, of course, what people are mostly talking about though is the sperm and the egg and the next generation and the whole reproductive cycle. And well, you only get one shot. And so there's just some really huge frightening ethical issues, and that isn't even all the problems yet. We haven't even got them all out on the table.
Oh my God, it is. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that movie or if you've seen this movie called Splice, but I feel like that's the kind of, if you've never seen it, see it. I feel like that's the kind of, it's kind of a B movie, but it gets the point across to what we're talking about. You even the old movie The Fly. Remember that? I mean, that's to me, that is a similar example of what could happen playing around with gene editing people.
Well, Melanie, I think that science fiction, like everything that happens, was originally predicted by some science fiction book somewhere.
Absolutely.
So like the Twin Towers and 9/11, there was a book 5 years before that had planes flying into the World Trade Center in a fiction book.
Wow. Okay,
somebody already worked that out, right? And so you get into AI, you get into gene editing. There's a reason that 2001: A Space Odyssey has HAL 9000 trying to take over the spaceship, right? And there's a reason that these science fiction movies depict these genetic disasters. Now, I want you to really understand, I'm not getting on this radio show to tell you that we should never do this and that I want everybody to be paranoid and all of that. I'm really not here to say that, because that's not realistic. I'm here raise a voice of caution of saying we really need to wade into this very slowly and very carefully, and the average person needs to know that this is going on. In fact, you need to know this is going on probably more than you need to know about, the fire on the south side, or a lot of the other things that our lives are cluttered with. This is going to majorly affect your life. If not you, then at least your nephews, nieces, children are going to be faced with these kind of choices when they go to the doctor.
And it's occurring to me that even if, let's just say that was something that was outlawed in the United States, and I think cloning and things like that are quote unquote outlawed. I don't buy that people aren't doing it. I just don't, because I know they're doing it in other countries where it's not outlawed.
Well, you know what, Melanie? I kind of straddle this interesting intersection of entrepreneurs, engineers, software developers, technology people, biologists. There's my day job, which is my company that I run, where I do all this business consulting, right? And then I have this Evolution 2.0 prize. And I got an email from a guy who was in biotech a couple months ago, and he says to me, in software, if somebody says, I've got something and it's going to be ready in 3 weeks, 3 weeks from now, it's still not going to be ready, and it's actually going to be done in 3 months.
True.
He says, in biotech, we know how that is, okay? He says, in biotech, if somebody says, I'm going to show you something in 3 weeks, it usually means they got it working 6 months ago, and they're kind of afraid to tell you about it.
Wow. Okay.
That's scary.
That is, and it makes a lot of sense, because they're I'm sure, like Dr. Frankenstein style, like doing stuff that's probably going to get them in trouble. But scientists are addicted to their craft, like the rest of us, and are addicted to whatever it is that we have passion about. And they're sitting. I can just imagine it. You're sitting in the lab and you're going, okay, but I wonder if this will work. You're going to really wait and send it up the bureaucratic chain to see if it works, and you have all the stuff right there. Or are you just going to do it?
That's right. So who knows what's already floating around in test tubes right now? And let's also remember, biology has a life of its own. Okay, every single cell in the world has some degree of autonomy that no computer or no piece of software has, because living things are willful and intentional, and software is just, ones and zeros on a computer, right?
Exactly.
So it's a whole different animal, no pun intended, right? I mean, it is an animal, right? And so I'm telling you, we're in for an interesting next couple of decades for sure.
So now, and actually, I should probably ask this on the other side of the break. We have like 4 minutes for the break. How do you feel about this as a Christian? Like, are you straddling the fence? How are you feeling about this? What do you think? What do you think God thinks of this?
I attended a conference last summer of the ASA, American Scientific Affiliation. It's the largest organization of scientists who are Christians. And James Peterson is the editor of their magazine, and he gave a fantastic talk, and I really completely agreed with it. He said, we can't take some simplistic, tribalistic, black and white approach to this subject. He said, as Christians, we are called to steward the earth, to heal the earth, to bring the kingdom of God to the earth. we're supposed to care for nature, repair nature. If a lion comes with a thorn in its paw, you pull it out. So we want to make nature better. And we have to have a tremendous humility as we come to nature. Things like, if you think you're smarter than that Ferrari with your dad's toolbox and screwdriver, you're going to have a serious problem. And if you do something to that Ferrari, to the steering system, and then you get in it and you drive, you might crash. And so we have to exercise such a level of caution. Now, so maybe after the break we can go further, but man, this is a fine line.
It certainly is, because I mean there are so many. I have some more questions, but we're going to talk about. You know what? I'm going to take my break a little bit early because I don't want to break up the next thing that I'm going to ask you, because we're into the playing God thing, right? And of course, anybody who's a Christian, and I think a lot of people who are not, understand how this whole imperfection and sickness and death are into the world. And so I guess you have to think as a Christian, how much, are we trying to do the job that Jesus already did? What is it that we're trying to do here? Like, what is the overarching goal? And I feel like when you're kind of trying to say, okay, we can stave off some disease until Christ comes back. Okay, that's cool. But when you get into, now we're going to start, making babies with the color eyes we want, I think now you might be stepping over a line. Like when you're trying to get perfection before perfection's due. Kind of thing is what comes to mind. I don't know how you feel about that, but we'll talk about it on the other side of the break. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I am your business diva, Melanie Collette. I'm so happy to have my guest with me today, Perry Marshall, who is an author, speaker, engineer, and a world-renowned business consultant, and the founder of $5 Million Evolution. I actually want you to talk a little bit about that too on the other side of the break, and just remind people what that is about, because it's just very, very interesting. We'll be back in a few moments. Welcome to this week's Money Talk with Melanie, Money Talk Minute. This week we're going to discuss savings mistakes to avoid. Here are just 3. First mistake, keeping your savings and checking accounts at the same bank. What do I mean by this? If you keep your savings account in the same place as your checking account, you're going to be way more tempted to transfer your savings money into your checking account and spend money that you meant to save. So you want to avoid that. It keeps you honest. Second thing, being seduced by introductory rates. Banks do this all the time. And anytime it comes to any special offers, quite frankly, it is usually some kind of trick. So be careful of that. Many banks will offer these awesome introductory savings rates to get you in the door, and then it only applies up to a certain amount of time, and then that rate goes down real low and you're really not benefiting. Finally, keeping all your savings in one place. Divide your savings up into different accounts for specific purposes. Have a separate one for emergency funds, or have a separate one to save for a car, something like that. The reason you want to do that is that if all your money is in one single savings account, it's very easy to accidentally spend something that was appropriated for one thing on something else. So that's this week's Money Talk Minute. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. Please be sure to watch Money Talk with Melanie Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio.
From the war front to the streets of our nation's capital, men of faith, Dr. Michael Jones, the underground professor, and Kenneth McClinton, the exceptional conservative, bring both constitutional gravitas and spiritual perspective on today's issues to the most influential Christian urban talk show, 9:05 p.m. Eastern, Thursdays, It's a new day. On New Day, Black and Red.
Hello, I'm Tim Hart. I'm the guy BZ hires due to his shameless contract with the SHR Media Network to voice his promos. He'd like me to tell you that the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be found on SHR Media Network, Spreaker, and YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American media maggots won't. You'll find that the speech is free, but the drinks are not. There, in the saloon, just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, BZ is sending his personal drones of freedom into the wheelhouses and ossicles of lovers of sovereignty and liberty nationally and globally. Broadcasting behind enemy lines in Pied, California, BZ swears that no rights were harmed in the making of this promo.
Power brokers use corrupt politicians, deceptive Islam, and lies from establishment media to turn the once shining city on a hill into the city of the blind. What do the elites fear? One man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me at SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Spreaker, iTunes, and YouTube for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because truth is not always pleasant.
Okay, we're back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette, and my guest today is Perry Marshall. And we're talking about the business of gene editing and making designer babies. Let me ask you, how much money do you think we're talking about? I know you're not here to necessarily talk finances, but what do you think the potential here is as far as the free market is concerned?
Oh, this is undoubtedly going to be a many billions of dollar industry, and like it's going to start. People don't think about or pay attention to it. It's going to be engineering plants. It's going to genetically modified foods, engineering medicine, engineering microorganisms like yeast and bacteria to produce certain things that maybe somebody wants to put into a medicine. It's going to be stuff like that. I think designer babies and stuff is still quite a ways off, but you have to understand that on a much smaller scale, it's more in a business-to-business kind of a setting. This stuff is already going on. You can already buy artificially enhanced bacteria that will make certain proteins that people need for certain experiments in industry and stuff. So this is already going on. And like, look, the venture capital people, the investors, I mean, they're salivating over it. Now, my prediction is this is actually going to go slower than the investors think it is. That would be my prediction. I think biology is more complicated than even the biologists believe. Messing with this stuff, that they get, sometimes you get very erratic results because it doesn't work the way you think it does.
Well, you would literally have to have the mind of God. I mean, think about it. I mean, as much as we feel like we understand, right? And we do understand a lot about the human body and about genes and all of that. But there is still a whole lot we don't know. And it's the unknown that's a little...
No, you put your finger right on it when you talked about playing God, because there's a huge assumption in biology that God has nothing to do with it. Okay, that it's just an evolutionary process. Now, this is why I wrote the book Evolution 2.0, because what I found out was that evolution is true, and cells engineer their own evolution, and they do it actively, not passively.
Really?
Years of research backing this up, and it's all on Google Scholar if you know where to go look. Okay, but the cells are smarter than we are.
And
okay?
I'm gonna.
That's the real problem. Okay, so never mind God. Like, we're not even as smart as a cell. And what I mean by that is one bacterium can do more software engineering in 12 minutes than a team of Google engineers can do in 12 weeks.
Exactly.
And so anything we do, go ahead, Melanie, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say you're exactly right. And I have to wonder if God didn't design it that way to kind of slow us down on this type of thing.
Well, so we barely know how to make bug-free software. Right. But if a bacteria or a cell gets hit with radiation, actually repair the code if the damage isn't too bad. And it will do it in real time. It will do it in minutes. There's all of these systems and things. And so this is one of the reasons I created the Evolution 2.0 prize, because I realized nobody actually knows where this comes from. Nobody knows where this natural ability to write and edit code comes from. And it doesn't happen by accident. And so I put together a $5 million prize to actually get to the bottom of it. I'm really trying to get to the bottom of the core mystery of life. And I think this is actually essential to us doing a good job. I think there's something going on in a cell that we have no comprehension of currently. And if we did understand it, A, I think we'd much more respect what nature does. And B, I think we'd be much more equipped to make decisions about what we should actually do.
And that I totally agree with. From a philosophical and a spiritual perspective, just wonder if that's not one of the secrets that God talks about, that he would keep the best because I'm concerned about what we would do with that knowledge once we had it.
Well, that's, too. But I decided to put up a prize and go after it anyway because I figure if I don't, Monsanto will. And I know that my investors and I are more conscientious than they are. And so actually, you asked me, well, what's your approach as a Christian? Well, as a Christian, I think most Christians are too timid. Like, okay, 500 years ago, Christians were in the lead when it came to science and art and music. And now you go to most churches and most, Christian things, and it's all really mediocre, and they're bringing up the rear. And it's true in science as well. The Christians have created their own version of science, which is really horrible, which I don't have time to go into today.
Right.
And I'm like, we got to pursue excellence. And, I think to discover God's world is an act of worship. To understand what's going on inside a cell, an act of worship, and I think we should find out how. And I think the atheists, I think the Christians, in many respects, have butchered it as well. It's done responsibly, and so I'm leading that charge.
I would think discovering how it is that God designed what he designed would be an act of worship, because it just gives you more reason for admiration and awe, I would think.
Well, it's admiration and awe, and it also gives you the ability to work with nature in a responsible way. I think the way that we interact with nature is kind of like a deaf guy screaming at a kid. I think there's it's like we have to stop and listen more closely to what nature is saying to us. I've been saying for years that almost every technological breakthrough that Silicon Valley is furiously trying to figure out, it's already been solved in the cell. Better ways of writing code, better ways of editing code, better ways of dealing with waste, better ways of sensing signals and processing information. So there's a huge treasure trove of insights. Like, I think there's hundreds of Nobel Prizes hiding inside every cell, and people the curiosity to go pursue that.
And now that's an excellent point. And not, I know there's a group. You're a group of investors. I'm trying to refresh my memory. Not all of them Christians, though, right? Most of them, but not all of them.
No. And I also have a judging panel, none of whom are Christians. I've got Dennis Noble from Oxford. I've got George Church from Harvard and MIT. He's the lead geneticist at Harvard. I've got Michael Ruse, who is an atheist philosopher and historian of science at Florida State University. And I deliberately put non-Christians on my panel because I didn't want anybody to think that we're doing some creationist Trojan horse. We're really trying to seek one of the biggest mysteries in science and get an answer to it.
Exactly. And ultimately, I think that answer is going to point back to our Creator. It has to, because that is the answer.
I think the world is divinely ordered, and I think that science proves that out.
Exactly. And, I love the people. I had this on social media the other day. They're like, oh, prove this, prove that. And I'm like, science continues to prove that. Just the one scripture that's like the earth is a sphere. I said, how do you think, I believe it was David that wrote that. Like, how do you think he knew that? Because of the fancy telescope he had? Or like what? Like before, Columbus, quote unquote, discovered it. So, I think it's really exciting and frightening. At the same, I'm hoping the good guys get to it before the bad guys do.
Well, that's what we're trying to do, and I think we'll get there faster with humility. And look, you can make all kinds of cautious pronouncements about how we shouldn't really do this, but when somebody's son has Down syndrome or some other thing, and that there could have been a way to fix it, that as humans, as stewards of the earth, isn't done. And we're not putting down people with Down syndrome at all, any more than we're putting down a person with bad eyesight who buys glasses, right? We want life to be better in any way that we can do it. And I think, every Christian knows that they have a divine a command to go out in the earth and do good in any way that you can. But you have to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves.
Indeed. And I think that is paramount and so important. And I love your point about making sure that you approach this with humility, which would seem to be, counter to the extraordinary work that you're doing. You know what I mean?
Well, I have found, as I've gone down this rabbit hole, one of the things that I've found is so many really talented scientists who find just astonishing discoveries and what they're doing, and nobody's listening. The evolution discussion in the United States and Great Britain has been just basically completely dominated by atheist and right-wing religious extremists, and neither of those sides is really interested in the science. And the real science is in the middle. I mean, Melanie, you're a political person. You know that in all political debates, the extremes on each side shout so loud that none of the sane people in the middle ever get listened to.
So true.
Right?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. And so in science, there's a really sane, wonderful middle who have made discoveries that they would make the hair stand on the back of your neck in a good way. They would give you goosebumps if you knew what they knew. But it's kind of been drowned out and I think the extremes, they bring a lot of ego and a lot of bombast to the table where it's really the opposite of what we need. And so hopefully part of my effort brings to light the work of people that are doing really great things.
I love it. I absolutely love it. We have about 1 more minute left. Tell the audience where they can look up your work and keep track of what you and your investors and that wonderful group of scientists are doing. Where can we find it? And your book as well.
So if you go to naturalcode.org, you can find out about the Evolution 2.0 prize, and maybe you or somebody you know can figure out how to win the money and solve the problem. My book is called Evolution 2.0, Breaking the Deadlock Between Darwin and Design. Evolution 2.0 is on Audible, it's on Amazon, it's in hardcover, it's in softcover, it's in Kindle. So really, do a book any way that you want to consume it. It's out there, and it will change the way you see the hand at the end of your arm.
Absolutely. And if you want an overview of the book and of the principles behind the book, check out the podcast the last time Perry Marshall was on the show. It was just really an incredible conversation, eye-opening. Usually, as Perry talked about earlier, usually people are like, it's either evolution or creation. And Perry kind of answers, can it be both? Explores the opportunity, explores the I don't want to say the theory because that's I don't believe it's a theory, but explores the theory that it could possibly be both. And it's just very interesting, very plainly explained as well, which is what I appreciated. Like even I could understand it.
In plain English, that's about it. Is it's you can understand it. You don't have to be a PhD. So
exactly,
it's evolution for mortals. So Melanie, it's been great being on your show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
That's the plan. Take care.
Take care. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Klett. I hope you guys enjoyed that as thoroughly as I did. Remember, I'm going to have Corey Poirier on the show on Monday. Remember, all of this is very important because after all, it is your money. Have a great weekend.